So the day's finally come. Those of you who are unlucky enough to follow me on Instagram will know that I have a love-hate relationship with this machine. It is a Cub Cadet XT2. It's got a little, I want to say Kawasaki engine in it. And it is probably the bane of my life. It's always needs repairing. In its 2.5 year tenure, it's had new blades, a new deck gearbox. That's the little gearbox that sits on the deck down there and turns one of the blades in the opposite direction. I've had punctures, tyres have come off. I've lost the key. The key is fucking stupid. You can't get new keys really from anywhere. They're a little plastic fob thing with a magnet built in. The magnet falls out, the key doesn't work, you don't notice. And then most recently I've done daft things to it. Like I've twice caught it on a strap that I have tied around a tree here. The kids in the garden have a slack line. It's like a big ratchet strap, massive, probably 25 meters, stretched between two trees, and they bounce on it and fall off it and hurt themselves on it. And when I mow the lawn, I have to take that off, and twice I've caught bits of the bodywork of this machine on the strap, on the ratchet strap. The first time I did it, I pulled this whole front end, just came off. In the process, I sort of knackered that bit, smashed this bit, scraped that bit, and one of the lights now flickers. I shoved it all back on. And then most recently, and I did do a small video about this, I caught the mower box that sits on the back, caught the mower box on the back on this strap. I pulled the whole mower box off, bent these two prongs that it sits on. So I just put the whole thing away in the shed, and I was like, oh, another thing, this wheel keeps coming off. For some reason that wheel must get a lot of hammer because it just keeps coming off. I've put locking nuts on it, Loctite, whatever. Anyway, found it again and the bolt, so I'm going to put that back on. I've bent that. That should be like that, straight, and it's bent. It's just, I don't know. It's I think it's meant for people to totter about on, mowing, you know, sizable lawns. I don't think it's meant for doing, you know, 2 or 3 acre sort of, not exactly fields, but it's not meant for heavier duty stuff, basically. So I keep wrecking it, and I've had a couple of unlucky things with it. I don't know, answers in the comments if you think I'm just a heavy-handed oaf, or if you think that actually this is not that tough a machine. Anyway, having just slagged it off, it is fair to say I've never serviced it. So it's time to give it some love. So you can see, I mean, I've had the deck off a few times, but I've had to use it in the wet recently. So it's covered in shit. This is my stick that I use for unblocking this when it gets full of toss, which it is at the moment. So I'm going to give it a good bit of loving. So it's a lawn tractor loving day today. So I've got a service kit off eBay. I've got some cheap looking engine oil, a couple of spark plugs, fuel filter, oil filter, and a new air filter to go on the engine. So I'm going to give it some love. Watch this space. Oh, and always remember not to be operated by you know who. All right, so first things first, what do we need to do this job? Not sure. Probably going to need the Aldi toolkit. There it is. Sorry, Snap-on. This isn't your day today. I don't have many Snap-on tools in my toolbox, as you might imagine. And this Aldi toolkit is the one I inherited from my fantastic uncle, who was always up for a bargain. It's never failed me yet, but I've lost a few sockets, obviously. So where do we start? Under the hood. Hood lifts up. Now, because I've torn this hood off before, I know how it unclips. So if you look down there, you'll see that actually you can just pull this off and out the front. So let's have a go at that. There is a cable, I think, that I might need to undo first. Think about it. There's a harness for the lights. So let's just get that out. Where's that plug? There we go. Look, this is actually a normal plug, isn't it? That's not sort of crazy automotive plug that you know, under your bonnet on your car. There's 58,000 of these plugs and they all open in slightly different ways. And that was quite straightforward. So if you look there, this little mounting piece here is open at that end. So I'm just going to pull it out and it sits on rubber sort of stuff. So let's do it. So I'm going to grab it by the front and give it a yank. Let's use the terminology. There we go. So that came off super easy. So these, let's flip that upside down. These bits here, see the little recess cut into them, they sit in there, so that's dead easy. So air filter, piece of cake, that comes off, that goes in there, dead easy. That's your intake, and they've even got a little wing nut on the end there on that Jubilee clip, so that's going to come off. So replace that. The new one comes with the foam. There should be a piece of foam around the outside of here as well, so you'll see the new one comes with that. Oil, right, obviously that goes in there. To drain it, there's a special little thing here. Now I haven't done this, but I have read up on it. I believe you pop that off and you're meant to get a hose on the end, and then I think, let me just clear all the crud off this. Can you see there's like a little twisty bit for it to sit in? I think once you twist that way and pull it out, the oil starts coming out. Now, I've had the engine running for a few minutes and had a whiz around the garden on it, so it's hot. So I should get as much oil as I can get out because it's nice and hot, so it should be nice and thin. Top tip. Oil filter next. That's easy enough. That goes there. That should, if it's been put on by a human being, unscrew. Otherwise, you might need a special tool that can grip on it, and you get a socket on the end of it to sort of turn it around. So I'll show you that tool in a sec. That comes off there. What else is in the kit? Oil, obviously that goes in there, it comes out there. Filter. What else I got in the kit? Oh, fuel filter. Right, so this is the fuel tank. Obviously it's mucky, and the outflow to the filter. There's a little thing here. Now this has got these little squeezy clips on it, so a pair of pliers on there will do it, or the clip pliers if you've got them, circlip jobs, but we'll just replace that. Make sure it goes that way. And then what's the last thing to do? Spark plugs. I haven't got a clue where they are. They must be hanging off here somewhere. Let's have a look. Good grief. Well, that's got to be generating a spark, hasn't it? That thing there. Oh, where are the wires that come off there then? Oh my god. This is a great how-to video, isn't it? Watch the bloke from Bob's Garden confuse himself, not being able to find a simple spark plug. Might have to Google this. I'll come back to it. That's it underneath. Where are the bloody pistons? Which way up is this thing? Right, I'm going to come back to that, and I'm going to show you the super tool for getting the oil filter off, and I'm going to show you how to find the spark plugs. Okay, I return. First of all, special little grippy device thing for taking off oil filters. You will see that as you turn that, which you can get a socket on, it grips. So you get that, you stash it on there, and then you'll be able to turn it like that. Is that obvious enough? So when I'm undoing it, it wants to go like that. Jeez, great camera work. Right, look at that. There we go, kill the cameraman. Right, so I get a socket on there and put a bit of force on there. Hopefully there's enough clearance there. I might have to sort of shift it around a bit so it's more like that. Right, so that's going to come off. Other thing is, when I was looking for the spark plugs, couldn't see the wood for the trees. Didn't have to Google this. You'll be pleased to hear I'm not a complete numpty. There, so there's one there. This is a twin spark, as they call it. So there's one there, Bajingo, and there's one there. So these rubbers, this is probably the first time these have ever been removed, but So that doesn't look like it's in bad condition. You don't really know until you get the plug out, but we'll do that. And we'll pull them out and swap them out nice and gently. I've got a nice long socket that will fit over there from the Aldi socket set. So we're good to go. Right, let's have a look back in a minute. So I thought it might be worthwhile showing you this socket I've got for spark plugs. Very useful. I'm sure anybody knows this stuff already, but if you don't, this is a spark plug socket, and what's different about this is it's got, I'm trying to hope you can see inside that. You definitely can't. Let me try and pick up the inside of that. So can you see? There we go, that's better. On the inside there's like a rubber coating, okay? And what that does is, well, it does two things, I suppose. It slightly protects perhaps the top of the spark plug when you're putting it in, but also it grips the plug. So when that goes in, it sort of feels like it's not going to go in properly, but you give it a push and it pops on and it'll grip the plug then. So get yourself one of these little spark plug sockets for when you're taking spark plugs out, because sometimes when you've undone the thread on the plug, you can't pop it out of the hole in the top of the cylinder. So yes, there we go. So I really am going to crack on now and replace these plugs and other bits, and I'll come back when I'm doing the oil change. So a top tip for those of you who are not a fan of flammable, highly refined, toxic liquids rolling down your arms and into your armpits, is to clamp the fuel line with something suitable before you take the bottom of it off. Otherwise you might find it all over the floor as well as all over you. It's not the worst thing in the world to get covered in, but I would suggest washing it off because it makes your skin all awful, and I'm sure it's not good for you. So clamp the fuel line before you take the bottom of it off. Anyway, the new one's here, so I'm going to find the circlip that I lost in the panic of being covered in fuel, put that back on the end, jam that in, and then release the pressure on the clip, a bit like I did at this end. Also, another top tip: don't get petrol in wounds because it stings. So you'll learn a lot on this channel. So a top tip for those of you who are not a fan of flammable, highly refined, toxic liquids rolling down your arms and into your armpits, is to clamp the fuel line with something suitable before you take the bottom of it off. Otherwise you might find it all over the floor as well as all over you. It's not the worst thing in the world to get covered in, but I would suggest washing it off because it makes your skin all awful, and I'm sure it's not good for you. So clamp the fuel line before you take the bottom of it off. Anyway, the new one's here, so I'm going to find the circlip that I lost in the panic of being covered in fuel, put that back on the end, jam that in, and then release the pressure on the clip, a bit like I did at this end. Also, another top tip: don't get petrol in wounds because it stings. So you'll learn a lot on this channel. All right, back again, and you can see there that the fuel filter has been replaced. No fuel in it yet, and hopefully no leaks, although I will have to keep an eye on that to make sure I've got that circlip in focus, you bastard, with enough clearance on the end, and it's actually, yeah, that looks good. Onto the task at hand, which is getting the oil out of there. Better go and find a hose pipe. I return with a hastily procured piece of garden hose that I definitely didn't cut the ends off with an angle grinder. So yes, I believe all we've got to do is stick that on the end, get it in there, and then there's some kind of twisty mechanism we have to do to open that. One of the things I'll always do is just take the top off the filler, make sure we can get air into the system so that all of the oil definitely comes out. Like I say, it's relatively warm. It did run it for a little while. We'll just risk taking that out so that I can drop something in there later on by accident. Right, so as I understand it, there's just a sort of twist involved and you pull. I mean, what could go wrong here? Nothing, surely. Right, hold on. There we go, I've pulled it. Oh, eureka. We've hit gold. It's piddling out. There can't be that much in here, but we'll just leave that to run now. That's not a bad design, is it? That's quite clever. And I notice there's even a little built-in sort of drip tray to catch the drips that come out of the filter when you take that off. That's interesting, isn't it? Well, it's interesting to me. It's probably not interesting to anyone else. I'll be amazed if there's anyone else even watching. So I'll show you this little gadget again that I've got, which is the oil filter remover. It's on little cogs. So when you turn it, you get that gripping occurring. And I think that is quite cool. They are cheap. So if you need to do any oil changes, and there is what I like to call an old-fashioned style metal one, then that's what you need, isn't it? Right, back in a few more minutes when this is finished doing a wee. Hello, so I bring you back at a time where you can watch a man disastrously remove an oil filter from a Kawasaki V-twin lawnmower engine. Yeah, so my battery went flat, and because I actually have to do this, I just went ahead and did it. So I took it off, obviously oil pissed out all over the place, but luckily I had a pair of old socks that I'd stuffed here. So it didn't go too far, except for on the floor, onto an old gin box, which is fine as well. So that got replaced. I then put 1.9 litres of oil into this hole here, and I have a good tip for you when you're measuring, looking at the oil on your dipstick. There's some important instructions on here. I don't know if you can read them, but it says, for correct oil level, do not turn cap on threads. So when you're dipping it in, it just needs dipping. If you twist it in, it's going to read too much. So bring it out, wipe it off, jobs are good. I must confess, I have had a whiz around the garden on it, and it's great. It's like every time you service anything, it sounds better afterwards. Whether it actually sounds better or not, I'm not sure. But nevertheless, what this thing needs now is a bit of a wash. I've found some nuts for the other wheel and got the bolt back on. So I've put that on. I had a go at straightening that, but it needed whacking with a hammer, which means taking that wheel off, which I'm not going to bother doing today. But that needs straightening. Other than that, it just needs a good clean. So I'm going to get the air holes out now, jet off as much rubbish as I can, and then get a little cloth out and give it a wipe. All right, you don't need to see that, but I will show you the results. Perfect. Okay, there we go. Look at that. It's like a brand new Lamborghini, isn't it? All shining. Not quite. The Cub Cadet has had its first service and its first wash in about 2 and a bit years. Look at that. How cool is that? Looks very new, doesn't it, under there? Hopefully, now that it's had a bit of love, karma, and the fact that it's been serviced will look after me. I am going to just give it a quick whiz around. There's a lot of water I can't really soak up. I've given all the electrical connections a good old squirt of WD-40 because I've no doubt got some of those quite wet. So we'll see. Look, I've even retained my trusty poking stick for when I have to mow too much grass at once and unblock this. It's got a little hook on the end. Oh, natural. There you go. That's how to look after, or not, your Cub Cadet.